Hello everybody and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Stephanie Toddy. I'm a marketing manager here for ExamSoft Worldwide. Our host for Working with Technology, How a New Assessment System Has Driven Success for Students today is Chris Wenchie, Instructional Designer, Adjunct Faculty, Texas A&M Health Science Center College of Nursing. Chris has been involved in instructional technology for over 20 years. Her professional passions are teaching, problem solving, and customer service, which makes her ideal to provide technical assistance to fellow faculty members. In 2009, the College of Nursing converted from Blackboard Vista to Blackboard Learn, and Chris searched for a better computer-based testing experience to best prepare nursing students for success with NCLEX licensing exams. If you have specific questions, we encourage everyone to type them through the chat feature of this webinar at any time. To pose a question to the presenter, click on the questions feature of GoToWebinar, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen, and type it in the box provided. All questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the presentation. Also, as a heads up, all attendees will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recorded webinar as well as a copy of the presentation itself. We would also really love feedback on our webinar series and encourage everyone to fill out the quick survey that will pop up for you at the conclusion of the webinar. Just as a reminder, we have another highly anticipated webinar next Wednesday, March 6th. Entitled Using Curriculum Mapping to Your Advantage, Strategies for Better Assessment, hosted by Dr. Jane Souza, Assistant Dean of Assessment, St. John Fisher College, Wegman School of Pharmacy, and Mr. Patrick Chad, Acting Associate Director, University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, School of Osteopathic Medicine. Full details on the registration page can be found at learn.examsoft.com/webinar. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over the presentation to Chris. Thank you so much for attending, and please enjoy the webinar.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for that introduction. As Stephanie did indicate, my name is Chris Wenchie, and I'm with the Texas A&M Health Science Center College of Nursing. As she already mentioned, my title is Instructional Designer, and I certainly do instructional design for our college, but I do a lot of more general instructional technology adoptions and implementations. I have my hand in a lot of different technology systems besides just merely doing instructional design work. And also, as she mentioned, my background is also as a faculty member. I'm not a nursing faculty member. I'm actually in the field of communication. And so I do bring to this position some sensitivity with the amount of technology that the average faculty person wants to have in terms of involvement. So that's a little bit about me. The webinar today, as the title certainly indicates, is about our experiences at the College of Nursing with preparing our students for the licensing exam that they have at the end of the program called the NCLEX. And we feel like the product ExamSoft has been one of many factors that has positively contributed to the success rate for our students. And that's why they've asked me to come and share with you today. I want to, up front, kind of cover a few things that this webinar is going to address today so that you can assess whether or not this is truly what you're interested in listening to for the next 45 minutes or so. First off, I want to discuss why we as the College of Nursing chose to adopt ExamSoft several years ago. Also want to share with you some basics of how we chose to implement. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail with that, but I'm going to discuss some things about how we train and how we handle some of the processes with the software. I think that's useful to other schools to hear about because you can identify the similarities and even dissimilarities that you have and things you might want to replicate or things that you would do differently because of your needs. Thirdly, I want to address why I think that ExamSoft has been successful with our faculty and students and why it's been so well received. And lastly, round it out with why we intend to remain a customer with ExamSoft. Thought a good starting point was to just kind of review up front a little bit of information about ourselves. A lot of times when people hear Texas A&M, they think of Johnny Football or the school that has 50,000 plus students. And while we are a part of the A&M system, until just recently, actually, the Texas A&M Health Science Center was its own separate university from Texas A&M. I say just recently because we were recently merged, and we will be one academic entity sometime in the foreseeable future, and so that's changing. But still, compared to Texas A&M University with 50,000 students, the College of Nursing and the Health Science Center are much smaller than that in scope. The College of Nursing in particular, we have about 187 students, so under 200 students, which is very, very small. We have around 30 faculty members. We are spread actually on 2 campuses, and some people are not aware of that. We have our Bryan College Station campus, and that's actually a picture of our building there. And then we also have a campus in Round Rock, Texas, which is near Austin. We are also a relatively new program. People hear Texas A&M and think of all the historical traditions there, but we actually started in 2008 with our first class, and it consisted of 40 students. We've grown into the 187 that we have now, but our program is still very, very new in addition to being pretty small in scope. We have been a customer of ExamSoft since 2010, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the timing on that in just a minute. Our student setup, or when it's time to load students to any technology system, we have a pretty simple arrangement because our students are divided into a cohort class setup. The students enter at the same time. They take the same set of courses in a scheduled curriculum. So when it's time to load them and set up courses, whether it be Blackboard or ExamSoft or wherever, it's actually very easy to deal with. If it's a manual process, a lot of systems we have are automated, but even when it's not real difficult to deal with because of the predictability of the cohorts. I think this next bullet, that we have 3 different computer-based exam vendors that we use. We use ExamSoft, obviously. We also have a standardized testing system that we use called HESI. If there's nursing clients that are listening today, I'm sure they're familiar with that. There's some other vendors that are available as well. But in a more general level, other health science programs, veterinary programs, even other biomedical science type programs have standardized vendors that you use. So that's something that's pretty typical. And then finally, we do use Blackboard, our learning management system, still for some quizzing and pretty low stakes exams or quizzes. And that's probably pretty typical. Most people have to have some combination of solutions that they look to. So what today's presentation is really focused on is the fact that our students at the end of their time with us take a board exam. It's called the NCLEX. And again, if you're from a health science background or something of that nature, another professional school, there may be a similarity there for you in that there's this one great exam at the end of their time with you as a student that's a pretty significant measure of how well they're prepared for their profession and what they've learned during their time with you. It's definitely an accountability factor. I'm not a nurse. Again, I say that, so there are probably people in the audience today that are listening that it's not the only goal that a program has. You know, one exam is not the total measurement of the success of how good of a nurse a student will be, but it is definitely one hurdle that students have to get past if they want to practice in their field. And so it is definitely something that matters, and it's a very easy measurement of how well they are doing academically. We're very proud. Since our 2000 start time, all of our graduates have passed the NCLEX. We have a 100% pass rate, and you can see on the screen there how that relates to other nursing programs around the nation, and even more detailed there how it relates to other nursing programs that are offering a BSN and comparable size and that kind of thing. So we do take a good bit of pride in the fact that our students have done well, and today I'm going to try to connect some of the dots with one of the things that we do in terms of computer-based testing using ExamSoft for that, and prepping our students so that they can succeed when it's time to take this high stakes exam called the NCLEX. As Stephanie mentioned, my background is I'm in instructional design. I have a faculty background. I dabble in a lot of different technology systems, and what I'm about to say is certainly not unique to me. But when I talk to other faculty, a lot of times we have conversations along the line of, I'm not an advocate of just using technology for technology's sake. I think that technology should be solving a problem or meeting a need or filling some kind of deficiency or gap. That's certainly not a new concept to anybody that lives and works in the realm of technology. Some people love technology inherently, just for its own sake, but I'm not one of those people. I like to always find out from someone what problem they're trying to solve and then make a suggestion about what would be the best software, and sometimes it's not even software to solve that problem. So I kind of say that up front. Back in 2009, when our IT made a decision to switch from Blackboard Vista to Blackboard Learn, this was really a very difficult time for us because we lost some functionality and we had some things that created some problems for us and made us start looking for a different solution for delivering exams to our students. And so on this slide that I'm showing you right now are some of the major issues that happened during that time frame that prompted us to look for a better solution than what we were giving our students to prepare them for exam days. We did move from Blackboard Vista to Blackboard Learn. If you're not familiar with that, the old WebCT Blackboard Vista had some pretty decent assessment capabilities, and we had coupled it up with another product called Respondus. And when we made the move to Blackboard Learn, we lost that functionality. It was no longer possible for us to be able to pull item data from our Blackboard exams or Blackboard quizzes. That new architecture of Blackboard Learn just doesn't store that kind of itemized data, and my understanding is it still doesn't. It's been an enhancement that Blackboard has had on the list for quite a while, and I'm really grateful that we didn't wait for it, because I think we would still be waiting at this point to have that functionality return. I can't hit this hard enough. I mean, for us, it was a showstopper. We immediately stopped delivering our exams in Blackboard and moved to paper-based exams in Scantron because we wanted to have that item data. We're pretty dedicated to being able to analyze our exams for validity and rigor and levels of difficulty. And when that went away, Blackboard ceased to be a viable option for us to use any longer. It wasn't the only reason why we were unhappy, but it was definitely the primary reason. In addition, at that particular time, we were having some other technical problems with Blackboard, and it was just difficult to get those problems solved without going into great detail about that. The growing number of issues that just couldn't even be fixed was not satisfactory to us, and we felt like our students deserved a better testing environment than what we could give through our instance of Blackboard Learn. So that was definitely the showstopper for us. In addition to that, we were a brand new program, as I just mentioned, and we had 40 students. I think we may have had a second cohort come through the door at that point, so we had 2 cohorts of students. We were still pretty small, but because we were so new, our resources in terms of room space and testing capabilities was still very, very minimal as well. We basically had one room, one lab that we could use for testing, and it wasn't dedicated to the College of Nursing. It was shared with some other colleges, and so we were having to be creative about our scheduling of exams because of limited rooms that could handle doing an online test, which is what we were doing with Blackboard. So that was really painting us in kind of a corner, and we thought if we could get some type of testing solution that didn't require the students to have to be hardwired into the internet, that we wouldn't have to use a lab, they could use their own laptops, and we could use just about any room available if it didn't have to be hardwired in, because our exams don't tend to last more than an hour or so. If a student has even a reasonable level of battery life, you can put them in any room to do the testing. And so that was something that we were really looking for, is something that didn't require having to be connected to the internet to take the test. In addition, we were very, very small in terms of resources for IT, basically me and a couple of other guys in the IT area, so we didn't want to have a solution that was constantly having glitches that couldn't be solved or a lot of tech issues to have to troubleshoot. We wanted it to be a very stable product that didn't require a lot in terms of tech support. The final thing is back to our goal that we mentioned earlier on the first slide is the NCLEX. We really were not happy when we moved to paper. We wanted to have computer delivery of exams because that's what the NCLEX board exam is. It's a computer-based test. We wanted to replicate the environment for our students the best that we could and not be having them take a paper and Scantron test. Now I realize today that some of the people listening, that is a perfectly fine solution for you. In fact, that may be what you desire to do, is have paper-based tests and use Scantron, and ExamSoft is flexible enough to offer that in terms of the features. It just wasn't what we were looking for. We wanted to deliver our tests computer-based, and so I just kind of want to say that up front, that if you're one of those customers that says, hey, I don't want to give the tests through the computer, I want a much more technical, less technical solution, ExamSoft can accommodate that too. We also had a couple of things that we wanted to mimic on our tests that ExamSoft was able to accommodate, and that first one is that our students are very much accustomed to taking linear exams. Linear meaning that as you go through the exam, you cannot go back to an earlier question, you can't change a question, you can't skip data, you have to go through it, and as you go through it, you see one question at a time and you can't backtrack. ExamSoft can obviously accommodate that. If you want to give your students more freedom than that, you certainly can allow for backtracking, but we wanted to mimic the testing style that the students get on the NCLEX. The last thing, I have a big star there by it, we needed to have a question type. It's probably the most difficult or rigorous question type that's on the NCLEX and some of the other HESI exams that the students take. It's a select all that apply or enabled all that apply, where you have more than one answer that's desired by the students to have to answer, and we wanted it to be scored all right or all wrong because that's exactly the kind of question that they're going to get on the board exam. And it's real important that the students practice exercising that kind of care in the everyday exams that they take in order to do well later on the NCLEX. Initially, when we adopted ExamSoft, they did have a multiple answer question type, but it had a built-in hint, and so if we have anybody out there in the audience that was a customer way back then, you'll remember what I'm talking about. But they added to, this was one of the features that we asked for as an enhancement, and ExamSoft responded and gave us the capability that we needed in terms of being able to ask that kind of question, and now students can under-answer, they can over-answer. It exactly mimics what we're looking for in terms of the level of difficulty. And so when we first adopted ExamSoft, everything that was on this slide was immediately available except that last item, and within a short time frame after we became a customer, ExamSoft made that enhancement, and we were able to say that everything on this list was met by ExamSoft. So that's pretty exciting for us. Well, I've already alluded to the fact of why computer-based testing was so important to us, but this is definitely probably one of the most important slides today that I'm presenting in terms of why we connect ExamSoft to our NCLEX success rates. It certainly is not the only factor, but what we do is we try pretty hard to mimic the testing environment that the students are going to have when they have to take the board exam. We start them off when they first come through the door in their first semester or two of classes, maybe not quite as strenuous, but by the time they're taking their upper level courses and about to graduate, we try pretty strenuously to mimic the environment, the testing constraints and everything else that they're going to have when they go to a testing center. And so if you kind of look through this list, I don't have to necessarily go through every single thing here, but we, in the earlier classes, may allow them to have some backtracking, but by the time they reach the upper level classes, they're going to be taking linear exams. In their early classes, it's not unusual for instructors to allow them to take an individual test and then immediately go back and take a group test, and they can get a few points added to their individual score if they do better as a group, and usually they do better as a group. We don't offer that when they get closer to graduating because they're certainly not going to have that option when it's time to take the NCLEX. We don't have that many select all that apply questions in the first semester or so, but we get more and more of those as they get to the upper level classes. And then finally, this doesn't have anything necessarily to do with ExamSoft, but it does demonstrate just how seriously we take this. In the earlier semesters, the instructors might allow them to have drinks and to wear caps and things of that nature that they still police the security of the exam, but overall, when we get to the upper level classes, they even try to mimic the constraints that they'll have at the testing center with. They probably can't have drinks, they can't have any of the other stuff out. I forget what the rule is on scratch paper, but earlier on they can have it, maybe they can't have it there. So we really do try to mimic the stress of taking the test so that they get used to that kind of thing. And certainly being able to deliver it on a computer is one more thing that is critical for students to practice. There's no way to not allow backtracking if you give a paper test. And so the computer for us is kind of a non-negotiable in prepping them to take their NCLEX. So I've mentioned several times that students have their own laptops. And we have a laptop requirement. And right off the bat, I recognize that in the audience, there's probably folks that in no way is that feasible for you to have a laptop requirement. So using the computer-based solution might not be the way to go for you. You could use a lab. That would be another option. But again, there's also the paper-based option if that's not something that you're interested in. But we do have a student laptop requirement, and we have it on our website up front to students when they're applying. And it's really, the specifications for the laptop are pretty low at this point. It doesn't take a lot to run ExamSoft. It doesn't take a lot to run the other software that we're requiring in our program. So they don't necessarily have to go out and purchase a new laptop to be able to accommodate the testing requirements. When they actually are admitted to the program, they come in for a new student orientation, and there they receive a lot more specific instructions on how to set up their computer. We have them in our system at that point, how to download the software, and how to change their passwords and all that other stuff to get them initially set up with ExamSoft. It's really pretty simple. It doesn't require too many pages to detail that information out to them. And then I also set up a practice exam specific to the nursing program so they can go in and test that everything is working the way that we want it to work. It's not a lengthy practice exam, and it's certainly not over nursing content, but they are able to take it. And then I'm able to track whether or not they're having any difficulty the first time through with downloading the test and uploading the results, and I break out individual emails and contact with the students. The other thing that it does is it enables me to be able to see what laptops they have in terms of Macs and Windows and things of that nature, because it tracks all that system information when they upload information to the ExamSoft server. So I want to switch over to the next slide, and then may come back. This is actual data from our students, and so I've blurred out some of the things on here just so that you can't see anything from confidentiality standpoint. But I want to show you that in terms of that tracking page, when you set up a test, or even just when the students register, you can get a lot of really good information about the systems that the students are using. Like right at the very top, you can see the breakdown in our student body between Windows users and Mac users that are registered right now, or whenever I took the screenshot. In addition to that, if there's a major upgrade that happens and there's some new functionality and you want to make sure that everybody's running the right version so that they are able to do the things that you want them to do, you can very easily go run and look at what versions there are out there, and you can do a filter on this page and send very targeted email to the 5 students out of your 200 that haven't done the upgrade yet, that they need to do it before you're going to allow them to take the next test. Otherwise, they're going to be missing some of the functionality. So it really enables you, from an administrator standpoint, to be very powerful and to be very targeted in who you're contacting, and you're not bothering everybody saying everybody needs to go upgrade when 95% of your users have already done that upgrade. So this is a very useful page to me in communicating to the students and keeping them up to date. I'm going to go back for just a second to the previous slide, because what I was saying is you can monitor the upgrades, you can see who's done it, you can see who's taken a test, you can see who's uploaded, and all those kinds of things. And so it's a very powerful software in being able to communicate with the students. Okay, so that's the students and getting them prepared and set up. This is how we've chosen to implement. You could certainly do something different depending on your size and the amount of people that you have to deal with. But what we've chosen to do here with our size and everything is we have 6 staff members. They're certainly working on a lot of other things besides ExamSoft, and I'm not including myself in this number. 6 other staff members who have the capability. I've set them up with being able to enter questions for our faculty members. Some faculty choose to enter their own questions, but some do not. And the ones who don't typically are ones who want to have an entire a bank of questions loaded from a publisher test bank, or they've typed them up in Word and they just don't want to take the time to put them into ExamSoft themselves. And so they have staff support for them, and they will actually enter the questions. We do not allow the staff members to create tests for the faculty member. We don't allow staff to post the test, and we don't allow them to score the test. We pretty much say that is on the faculty to take care of, because we don't ever want a situation where the staff member has chosen the wrong question and it made it onto the test and there'd be some disagreement about that. So staff do assist our faculty with being able to get the questions into the bank, but at the point that it turns into an actual exam, then we get the faculty involved. And so that's how we've chosen to do it. It's a very simple thing to implement. It takes me about 10 minutes to train any staff member in how to enter questions into the system, and they're up and running immediately. So it's very easy. As I mentioned before, sometimes the faculty will write their own questions. I'd say a good bit of the time they do that. Some of them use publisher test banks that come with a particular book that they've adopted. We have a lot of faculty teams, so it's not like it's one faculty member that's chosen a book. So we do load sometimes an entire bank of questions, because one semester a faculty member may teach and they like these questions, and then the next semester a different faculty member may teach and they want slightly different questions. So we go ahead and load the entire bank of questions for them to be able to choose from. Finally, and this is pretty common too, we load the bank, but they want to edit the questions that are there. They don't like the way the publisher wrote them, so they go in and take what was the base question and maybe tweak it a little bit better to what they like it and what they emphasize in their class. And so anyway, that's in terms of the staff and getting them prepared. Then I like the question that sometimes comes to me when I'm talking with others about ExamSoft is, well, how do you get your faculty all up and running using this product? And the honest answer is, I don't get them all up and running. It depends. Faculty are like, in terms of using ExamSoft, there's a continuum. There's a continuum of interest and there's a continuum of skill there of how many want to be completely independent and do their own thing in ExamSoft and they don't really need my assistance or staff assistance at all. And then there are some that are on the lower side of that want to just use it minimally and have much less understanding of the software. They just want to be able to give their tests and decide what questions are going to go on those tests and decide what adjustments are going to be made once the scoring's been done. But as far as actually doing all that in ExamSoft, it's pretty low. I can get involved in terms of once they decide on their questions, I can post the exam for them. They don't have to literally know how to do that. In some cases on scoring, I can run the reports. They can look at the hard copies and tell me what they want done, and I can do it for them if they don't want to do it within ExamSoft. The functionality of ExamSoft is so easy. The hard work is making those decisions, and that doesn't have to happen within ExamSoft. And so if you have faculty that you don't consider that tech savvy, or if you're in the audience thinking you're not that tech savvy, depending on how your school chooses to implement this, you may not have to actually touch ExamSoft that often. I would say the majority of our faculty kind of fall in the middle. They do some things in ExamSoft, and then they get my assistance with things that they don't do all the time. So I would say the majority of my faculty is probably in the middle spot. And then I have about 5 faculty that I would classify as being completely independent. They do most everything from entering their questions, posting their own exams, scoring their own exams, pretty much everything. They come to me when there's something kind of an aberration that they need help with. And in fact, they are my backup. Whenever I'm not available, if the other faculty have questions, they go to these faculty that are kind of super users for assistance with how to handle posting an exam, for example. So the answer is, it really accommodates any level of technical proficiency that your faculty might have. One thing that we do here at the College of Nursing is every single time that we have an exam, we have IT support present at that exam for about the first 5 minutes. Most of the time, we're not needed at all. I tend to go to some of the exams as well, but IT is at every single exam. At the beginning of the semester, we get a calendar of all the exam dates, and if they change, because sometimes they do, faculty notify us and we update that calendar, but IT puts them on their calendar as well as I do, and we show up for about the first 5 or 10 minutes of the exam and make sure the students are able to get into the test without any kind of difficulty. Usually that's about all it takes. Sometimes we have no issues at all, but when we do have a few issues, they usually are pretty quick fixes. On the rare occasion that something really crazy happens, we have backup loaner laptops that we have ready to go should a student drop their laptop on the way to class and they can't even boot up their computer, or they get a virus the night before and they didn't realize it until they get to the exam site. We do have backup laptops that we can put them on if we need to, but for the normal kinds of things that happen, there's really a couple of issues that we still have from time to time, but they both take about 30 seconds to fix. They're pretty minimal issues, and so we get them started in the exam. It's a real rarity for anything to happen once the test starts, but when the test has begun, if there's any question or problem, the faculty would then either text me or contact IT. If none of us are available, then they could call the ExamSoft administrator's line and get support that way as well, or call one of those other faculty members that I've talked about. But that really doesn't happen too often. That once the exam is up and going, the only thing that can really sometimes happen is the student might have difficulty uploading their results if they can't reconnect to the internet, and that's a really fast fix. So IT support is pretty minimal. It's a pretty stable product and not a lot of problems in terms of administering it. Well, kind of the heart of ExamSoft is the data that it gives us. We are really excited about this, and this is definitely the biggest selling point to faculty. I had several people ask me about this recently. How did you convince your faculty to get excited about ExamSoft? And truly, I didn't have to convince them to get excited about it, because when you get all this data and you get it instantaneously, it's pretty exciting to the average faculty member to have this empower you in terms of making questions. So some of the things that are available within the ExamSoft soft score system are the answers to some of these questions that you can have once you give exams. And I think at this point, kind of in defense of faculty, speaking myself as a faculty member, I didn't have that much training in how to write exams. I had a couple of graduate courses about how to write assessments and how to assess assessments and that kind of thing, but we're content experts. We study the field that we're in. We don't study how to give exams in it. And so it's really helpful when you can get software that will help guide you in interpreting those statistics and looking at the content that you have. And so some of the things that you can pretty easily answer are, you go back to the previous semester if you're reusing an exam or reusing the brunt of it and say, what did I have to adjust for the last time that I gave this exam, so I don't replicate that same mistake this semester too. You can ask yourself and find the answers to, are any of your questions on your exam either too difficult or confusing? They really tripped up students. We do that pretty well. We've been doing that pretty well since we adopted ExamSoft. The next question is, are there any questions that are too easy? Nobody's missing them. They're not being distracted at all. That's one that we can still stand to do some improving on, and I'm working with faculty to analyze their tests along those lines. We've tended to make adjustments to the betterment of the student's sake. The students will let you hear about it if a question was confusing and everybody missed it. They're not going to necessarily complain when a question is too easy. And so you've got to look at the data to find that. Who are my at-risk students? Obviously, that's very, very important to you. No matter if you're in a nursing program that's got an NCLEX at the end or whatever program you have, you want to know what students are struggling. Even if they're passing the test, it doesn't mean that they're not necessarily at risk. And so that's some important data to take a look at. And finally, how did students do this semester versus last semester, or the entire item history of when that question has been used? That type of information is available. So these are the questions I want to show in the next few slides, examples from reports that I pulled on an actual test of ours that shows you how you could find the answers to these questions. So in answer to the question of what items did we have to adjust the last semester, I just pulled a sample test. I highlighted there in green a couple from this particular exam that it looked like the instructor basically, the original answer, she took an additional response. So either the distractor was flawed and it sucked too many people in, and so she gave credit for a second choice on these questions, or possibly the item stem wasn't clear enough in terms of what she was getting at that both of the options could potentially be right. So if this would be me, then I would know I would want to make corrections to those two questions before doing them again. And what I usually advise faculty, and I would bet in both of these instances, if you're going to make a change to these questions, you probably want to create a copy of the question and get a new instance of it so that it doesn't cloud your performance history. If you make a change to the distractor, you make a change to the item stem, it's fundamentally a new question. You want to get a fresh start with it rather than dirtying up your performance data. So anyway, this is a report that's available to just go in and take a look at and see what items were flawed so you don't replicate those mistakes the next time around. That's pretty simple. There's a report that ExamSoft added. I don't remember exactly when they did this, but it's a relatively new report. They've had it out there within the last year or so. It's called the Faculty End of Exam Report, and it's a really, really useful interpretation of the statistics if your people are not stats hounds. It basically gives a summary of the reliability of with the KR score of how rigorous your test was. In this instance of the one I pulled, I again took out the identifying data, but this one was a little bit on the bad side. Not horrible, but definitely could have some improvement. And so you can have your faculty look at that. On the same report, I'm going to go to the next slide. It goes through and doesn't only look at the aggregate data, but it gives you the specific item-by-item data of who took the test. In this case, there were 33 students that took the test. And so you can go through and look at all the questions that all 33 students got right, and then nobody missed anything on. So for example, in this one, question 1, question 2, question 6, question 7, nobody missed those. And if this is a 50 or a 60 item quiz, we're already getting into quite a few for nobody to have missed. And so that's an indicator of why your test may be coming across as at an aggregate level of being too simple or not enough difficulty there. This is also on that same report. It shows the category distribution. Categories are additional tags or labels that you put on each and every single question to identify them. In this particular exam, the only categories that were entered are Bloom's taxonomy. But the College of Nursing actually uses, we do use Bloom's, but we have 4 other categories that we have in our system. This is our choice of what we wanted to implement. You can pick categories that better suit your content. If you have nursing background, these will have meaning to you. If not, they probably won't. But our categories that we have at the major level are nursing process, client needs, specialty area detail, nursing concept detail, and then Bloom's taxonomy. This exam only made use of Bloom's taxonomy. We're hoping to get most of our questions tagged in some of the other categories as well. And the reason being is that a student may have passed your test, they made a 75, but they missed every question that was a nursing process question that dealt with planning, or they missed every question that was dealing with cardiac part of the body. And that's important information to know, that obviously they probably are either struggling to understand that or they didn't study that content for the test. With regard to the at-risk students, I blanked out names on here, but it would go through and identify for you students that were maybe struggling. And if you'll recall, this test was actually coming out on the easy side. So again, that could be data that's important to you to identify what students are struggling even on an easier exam. So one additional thing that we do here in the College of Nursing is with the at-risk list, we have a dedicated faculty member who does just coaching and remediation. She's not teaching any of the courses that we are currently offering in our curriculum. Her role is to do remediation and coaching with the students, and she uses this report as well as several other things in the system to meet with students individually. The students can meet with their instructor to talk content in the course, especially if it's something that they're not understanding, but they can also meet with this professor who is not the instructor of the course to be able to talk about test-taking strategies and other kinds of tips and remediation generally. They can also certainly talk course content if they're struggling to understand something to get additional, another professor's perspective on that content. But a lot of what she does is actually just general test-taking strategies and that kind of thing. Finally is item performance history. This is where you can compare it from one semester to another. This is that same test of 33 test takers. There's 26 that got it right and 7 that missed it. But you'll see in the total history, there were 62 students who took it, so probably the previous semester. The previous semester did just a little bit better because there were 29, if I do my subtraction correctly there, that took it, and only 4 missed it. So in terms of rate, this current semester did a little bit less successful on it than the previous semester. That might be of interest to you as well as you're assessing. It could have been an instructor change, it could have been a book change, there could have been any number of things that account for that. But nonetheless, you can compare things over time. Well, I'm winding things down here. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, but I want to close out with the last 3 slides here. First of all, just kind of summarizing for you why our students have told us that they like ExamSoft. The things that they have stated to me is that they find it very easy to install and easy to use. It's not a complicated software. Soft test, the student side of it is. They get immediate fast scoring of their exams, and they love that. They don't want to have to wait for results, and they don't have to. One thing I hadn't mentioned before is that we put rationales or feedback on every question that we use for an exam, so the students have feedback in terms of why the right answer was right and why the wrong answers were wrong. Not that many of our faculty allow this, but some do, in terms of allowing them to see where they relate to the overall scoring of the exam, the ranking. That is a possibility. If that's something that you find compels your students to work harder, they can see how well they did relative to other students. And then finally, what I've already mentioned, we have individualized coaching based on their performance on the test. And so all of that leads to the student success, and that's the reasons that they've told us that they enjoy using the product. On the faculty side, the things that have been stated to me of why they like it, it's pretty easy to use. It's easy. Definitely the second bullet makes it more popular than some of the other vendors that we use. The ability to score and rescore and try things out if you're not sure what you want to do before the students can actually see the scoring, and make those adjustments if you need to make them. It's very, very simple to do. Of the 3 products right now, between the custom homepage and Soft Teach and Soft Score, I think Soft Score is the most intuitive. Faculty can pretty much just sit down and start using Soft Score. There's not a lot of training that's needed for that, and so they really enjoy it. And then finally, what I've already mentioned in the previous slides, the assistance with being able to interpret results and doing item analysis. People that are not that statistically savvy can still use this program to interpret how they're doing in terms of their test authoring. So to kind of wind down, we definitely intend to continue using ExamSoft in the near future. In fact, we're intending to start using it in the one cohort that we haven't been using it, which is 100% online. There's some enhancements coming with ExamSoft that really make us excited about that for our 100% online programs. If we have time and if it comes up in the questions, we can talk about what some of those enhancements are that are coming in the next year or so. And we, as a personal goal, we want to expand our use of categories. I already showed you that some of our questions only have been tagged with Bloom's taxonomy. We want to start using them in some of our other areas so we get better levels of reporting. Incidentally, you can always go back retroactively and tag things and rerun the reports. We do that on some of our exams that we're curious about. So if you don't have all those categories put in by the time that you launch your exams, you can go back, put them in after the fact, and then rerun the reports and get that data. And finally, this is something that's not necessarily unique to ExamSoft, but I want us to start doing something that some of our other vendors do, and that is put some experimental questions on exams so we can get some data about them before they really count, and I think that would be a good use of the software. So we're really excited. We're pleased with the program, and we're looking forward to some of the things that are coming, and that's pretty much what I had planned to share today, and I'm open for questions.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. I'm just going to switch over really quick. Okay, everybody, just as a quick reminder, we're going to go ahead and start the Q&A portion of the webinar now, but as a reminder, if you have any specific questions for Chris, please type them in the questions section of the GoToWebinar toolbar, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen right now. Okay. All right, Chris. The first questions that we have, the first question we have is: do you allow your students to see their score at the end of each exam, or do you wait until you review the item analysis?
That is up to the instructor discretion, and I would say right now that probably fewer than half of our instructors allow the students to see their score immediately. And the reason for that is that most instructors want to take a look at that item analysis before they decide whether or not they're going to need to make adjustments. The other thing is, on occasion, it's pretty rare, but 1% of the time, something just got keyed incorrectly. And if students see that they made a 90 on the test and then you went in and corrected the key from the wrong answer to the right answer and now they made an 88, they're going to wonder why their score went down, and you have to explain it. And no amount of telling them that it was just miskeyed, it always seems to be a sticky situation. So most instructors have opted, I would say the majority of them have opted to not allow the score, but they go back up to their offices after the exam, score it, and they usually get the scores into Blackboard later that day or the next day, unless somebody misses the exam, and so it's still a pretty fast turnaround.
Great, thank you. The next question is, you said that you do not interact with ExamSoft via the internet. Why not?
Well, the way the software works is from the student perspective. I guess I better clarify this. The students need an internet connection for about 30 seconds to be able to download the test to their laptop, and then it actually runs on their laptop, and they no longer need the internet to take the test. And so if you have your network goes down in the middle of a test, it doesn't impact the ExamSoft takers at all, because it's just like having Word open on your computer. It's not contingent upon the internet. Then when they finish their test, it goes out and finds the internet again and uploads the results back up to the ExamSoft server. So it takes, again, about 30 seconds to a minute, or if you have a really long test, it might take a couple minutes. But the only time you actually have to have the internet is for the student to download the test to their computer and then to upload the result back up to the server. The entire test, once it's been entered into, does not require the internet. Does that answer what the person was after?
I believe so. Thanks, Chris. The next question is, could you talk a little bit more about faculty onboarding? Wouldn't tagging all the questions require a lot of work?
Yeah, and that's partly why we did not do it up front. Although if I had hindsight, hindsight's 2020, I probably would have had them do at least Blooms up front. But we have our categories. They're sorted in a table and they're all coded. And so now what happens is if the faculty member doesn't actually want to do the tagging themselves in ExamSoft, when they have a print copy of their exam that they're reviewing before we launch it, and most of them will print out a copy because a lot of times people prefer to edit that way, they'll have the list of categories right adjacent to the test, and they can just write, I want categories A1 and B3, and those translate over to being nursing process application, and then Bloom's taxonomy application, or whatever it happens to be, and they don't have to go in and do the tagging. We give it to the staff member, and they go tag the questions. And so for the person who doesn't want to do it in ExamSoft, they can do it on paper, and the staff can do it for them. But it's actually very simple from the software to just go, there's little tick boxes to go check however many categories that you want. So it's not real labor intensive.
Great, thank you, Chris. The next question is, you mentioned that your program does have a laptop requirement. What other methods can be used other than laptop? Could you expand on that?
The ones that I'm familiar with, and I'll defer to you to talk about the paper-based with Scantron, since we're not using that solution. But in addition to the laptops that we require of our students, you could have a lab set up, and ExamSoft has a way that you can install the software in a lab setting, and then the students would still use their ID to log in, but that way various students can use the same computer, and it still tracks according to whatever the user ID is. So you could do laptops, you could do a lab setting, and then you could do a paper-based Scantron solution as well. Those are the ones that I'm familiar with.
Right, that's exactly right. So we have multiple institutions that use one of those only, or will also use a combination of the different platforms. So students who want to use their personal laptop can. If they don't have one available, they have the option of using a lab computer, or some programs will also do Scantron as well. So obviously the proctor or professor would be providing a sheet of questions. They fill out the Scantron-like form, but then once the Scantron is graded, all of that data is still pulled from the Scantron as well. So you still get the benefit of all of the analytics from the exam. The other option that we're going to have coming very shortly, we're introducing it this spring will be iPad, which is very exciting. I actually got a demonstration of it this morning, and it is beautiful. The app for the iPad that will come out for Soft Test, which is our testing app. So that will be coming this year as well. Okay, the next question that we have is, when do students get to see the rationale? This would also have to be done securely, I imagine. Do they see rationale without knowing their personal grade?
That, too, is up to the instructor's discretion. We have two solutions that we use here at the College of Nursing. When the instructor feels that they have enough class time to allow the students to be able to review the exam immediately after they've taken it, there's an option when you launch a test to allow the students to be able to review their results right then. You actually don't have to show them the score, but obviously if they're savvy enough, they can do the computing in their head, so there's no reason not to show them the score. And so the instructors that do that typically show them the score. But one thing that I would add to that, because it still may seem like it's not a very good solution, is we typically randomize our questions. And so I see question 1 first, but the person sitting right next to me sees question 50 first, or whatever. It's randomized. When it's time for me to review at the end of my exam, I don't have to worry too much as an instructor that someone could be looking on someone else's screen and getting answers to the question that they're on, because they're not going to be in the same order as what the person's taking it, especially if you have a linear test. Then they can't control and go looking for the question to get the answer to. In addition, when we first adopted room size and room limits was a huge issue for us. Now we have quite a bit of room in the classrooms that we have, and so we make them skip a chair between each person. So the capability of being able to look over on somebody else's screen while they're taking an exam is really pretty minimal. The other side of it is we have probably the majority of our faculty don't choose to do that because they don't want them to see the score. We print out, there's a report available, an individual report for students. It's a paper copy, and we only print out the ones that they've missed. You have a choice to give them the entire exam with the rationales and everything, but what we typically do is we'll print out, say a student missed 5 questions on the test. They'll only see those 5 questions that they missed. They'll have the rationales. They'll have all that with it. If they want to go back and review the entire test, they can set up a time to meet with the instructor to see the entire test, because maybe they guessed on 8 questions and they got really lucky and they got those 8, but they want to see that as well. Then they can set up a time with the instructor to review the entire exam. But most of them are only concerned about the ones that they missed, and that's a paper copy. They do not get to keep that. It is securely, they come up, they check it out, they review it at that time with one of the staff members, and then the staff member recollects it.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. One more question I think that we have, and this is actually maybe something that I need to answer, but the question is, does ExamSoft interface with all Scantron scanners? And the answer to that is yes. We do work with pretty much all of the major Scantron interfaces. Okay, and that wraps up all the questions, unless somebody would like to throw one out there really quickly. Just want to thank everybody for coming today. Again, just to reiterate, we will be sending out an email tomorrow that will have a link to the recording of this webinar as well as a copy of the slide presentation. So if you would like that for your reference, or if you'd like it to share with other coworkers or faculty, please feel free to do so. Oh, I'm sorry, it looks like we've got one more question. Chris, this is the last question. Do you use proctors during your exams?
Well, we have, like I said during the presentation, we have faculty teams for almost every course because we have multiple campuses. We have a faculty person at each campus, and if they can't be there because of another obligation or they're teaching in another class, then they'll have somebody cover the classroom anyway. And so there's always at least one faculty member on both campuses when we do the exams, and so they tend to proctor their own exams. If they can't make it, then they would get someone, yes.
Great, thank you so much. Again, thank you to everybody for being here today. Thank you to Chris for your great presentation. We'll be sending out emails, again, an email tomorrow, and also look for our upcoming webinars at learn.examsoft.com/webinar for some more great features that we have with other faculty from around the country. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great day.